Yeah. By the way, like, back when I was a kid, 50-point games were rare. Like now they happen like every 4 days, but
no. Now, like last night, there wasn't one. And it's like, what the hell, man? Off night for the NBA.
Right. I know.
Well, Clay goes for 54, and it's like a footnote that night.
It was, and it was correctly a footnote.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, so this season, I was looking this up the other day because I was talking about this with Adam Himmelsbach from the Globe. This season's already had the 12th most 40-point games of any season. And it's well over halfway to smashing the season record.
Tell me what you told me about this. The record is from 1961-62, but yes. Tell me the key about that season that you told me the other day.
Well, I don't have the exact number in front of me. It's around
ballpark it.
No, it's around 140 games that season that someone scored at least 40 points a game. He had, I believe, 65 of them. Wilt by himself that season ranked like 30th all time among all NBA seasons in terms of 40-point games in a year.
I might botch this, but our stats and info group had a little nugget the other day that there's already been, I want to say, more players here it is. There have been 6 players already to score 55 or more. That's already the most in NBA history for one season. Not 55-point games overall, but players who've scored 55. Donovan Mitchell, Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid, Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And 3 of those are since Christmas. I mean, it's insane.
Doesn't Giannis have 2 50-point games?
No, that's 55. 55 right. Plus.
Well, but I think he's got 2.
Luka had 3 in a week.
Jeez. So anyway, in the Western front court, LeBron's won.
Well, here, by the way, just one thing on that, just because I looked this up while we were talking. There's been 19. That was actually from last year. There's been 14 50-point games already this season. The record in a non-Wilt season is 23. So we're gonna surpass that pretty quickly.
You interrupted Wendy on his podcast to blurt out that. Wendy, take the wheel, take the wheel, Wendy.
Just saying, we're in an unprecedented situation.
Two-time defending MVP Nikola Jokic is second in the front court. Now, in third, which would get a starting nod, you have Anthony Davis, who they're just not putting a timeline on. Like,
right.
He was really good and was playing all-star level.
Mm-hmm.
But then in fourth was Zion, who was coming on strong, and now Zion's out at least 3 weeks.
And same thing, playing really well, certainly playing at an all-star starter caliber level. But like, hopefully he's back before then, but we don't know that.
I mean, he's getting reevaluated in 3 weeks, let alone coming back in 3 weeks.
Right.
I think the next most deserving guy is Sabonis. After that, I think Lauri Markkanen's the next most deserving.
Well, I will say this. So
I think you're skipping one pretty notable guy, I would say. That's Paul George.
Well, Paul George has been hurt a bunch of games and he's hurt again. But Paul's going to get in, I think. But I will say this.
He's played as many games as Zion and more than AD so far.
Well, that's true. And Zion's not exactly going to be pressuring him.
Yeah, and those guys aren't going to play any games at all.
But as far as voted in as a starter, I think either AD or Zion is going to end up getting voted in. So I don't know what's going to happen there. So Andrew Wiggins is fifth. That's the Warriors vote carrying him. He is not an all-star this year. Paul George is sixth. Lauri Markkanen is seventh. Now, we could potentially have something interesting. It's not very often that you see a trade where both teams acquire an all-star.
Right.
Well, it is definitely within the realm of possibility that you're going to see Donovan Mitchell and Lauri Markkanen both in the All-Star game, and you're going to see Sabonis and Tyrese Halliburton both in the All-Star game. Both those trades made within the last year.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say that's
it's a good chance to happen. Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's likely. There's a real chance, like you said. It's not impossible that Markkanen is starting the All-Star game.
You're right.
Starting? Why? Because they're going to pick an injury replacement. They want to put a Jazz player in the starting lineup?
If Zion and AD might end up both ahead of him. They both might not play in the All-Star game with injuries.
Well, Zion should be back by the actual All-Star game.
I mean, possible.
Let's hope.
It's 5 weeks basically with a hamstring injury. Like he could be back.
But if AD is not back, which they're not putting a timetable, so I don't know. I know that AD's injury is to the navicular bone. It's a stress reaction to the navicular bone. And let me just say, you don't want to break the navicular bone. So whenever you hear anything with that, you're going to be cautious.
My only point was that if you look at it, if AD and Zion are both injury questions, and then I would say it's probably going to be one of Paul George, Markkanen, or Sabonis. If you're just going by in terms of like who deserves the spot, which is wild.
And the Jazz PR sent out some really cool posters of Markkanen, although I didn't get one. Where's my finisher poster?
I have one.
Derek?
I have one at my house. I have one at my house.
I
will also say,
crap.
and this is not a knock on either Markkanen or Sabonis, who have both been terrific this season and are going to be deserving All-Stars. It does go back to what I said before. There's just way more talent in the East right now than in the West. When you look at some of the choices that are going to be made for some of these final couple of spots, like the fact that either of those guys is going to start in the All-Star game and either Jason Tatum or Joel Embiid is not, or even that Zion or AD at this point is going to start in the All-Star game and Jason Tatum or Joel Embiid is not. It's not really much of a debate about who should be.
That's fair. Markkanen, though, I mean, credit to him. He's
incredible season.
He absolutely should be an all-star. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's averaging about 24 a game, 53% from the floor, 42 plus from 3-point range. Nobody expected
42 plus on 7 attempts a game. I mean, he's been incredible.
When you punch into StatHead, like how much he's scoring in his efficiency, it's not a very long list that pops out.
By the way, you mentioned Sabonis earlier on a contract extension. Lauri Markkanen is eligible for an extension this summer.
Another guy who, based on what he's making, I think he can probably do a lot better than that.
Well, that's a fascinating question as to what Lauri Markkanen should do. I would say he's in a pretty similar position to the one that Julius Randle was in a couple of years ago, where Julius had an incredible season, best season of his career to that point, was an all-NBA player, right? And he took the max extension he could get and has been, last year he struggled. This year he's been better, but might get that contract if he was available now, but decent chance he wouldn't. I think that's going to be it's going to be a pretty fascinating question for Markkanen and his representatives to think about, is if they get offered the max extension they could take this summer, do they jump on it or do they wait? I think you could make an argument either way, at least based off how he's played so far. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I will say this. One thing that is interesting is that the Jazz are going to have to pay somebody.
Oh, they want to pay Markkanen, clearly.
Well, also, you've got Jordan Clarkson, who is extension eligible. We talked about that with Bobby Marks on the pod that came out on Monday. But like, if you're Lauri Markkanen and you're like, well, look, if I have another really good year, I might use the M word.
Well, the Jazz also potentially have the ability to renegotiate and extend him too, which could maybe get them up to a higher number than they otherwise would, based off the amount of.
I'd have to look at their cap sheet on that one.
Well, I'm talking about this summer, not today.
Yeah, and also that's a very good point. Renegotiation extension is a weapon they could use. It also depends on what they do at the trade deadline, with whether or not they're shipping guys off or if they're taking on money for picks or something like that. But Markkanen is an interesting situation.
I mean, you look at his contract going forward. He's got a $17.2 million contract for next season, and then he's partially guaranteed for $18 million a year after that. That's you talk about contracts around the league with the way he's playing. If he stays anywhere near the pace he's been on, that's one of the best contracts in the league. Which, when the Cavs signed it, even last summer when the Jazz traded for it, I certainly was not the biggest Lauri Markkanen fan at the time, but I don't think anybody in the league would have been looking at that as some kind of incredible value deal. And the way he's played now, it's quite clearly one.
Yeah, I do think regardless, he'll be in Utah for a while. How exactly that's figured out on the financial end, we'll see.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah. The depth at Western Conference front court, like you can't put Kawhi in. Missed way too many games.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.